Hello, everybody. Welcome to Feedback for the week of April 6th. I'm Adam Sessler. It's an exciting week, right?
Yeah.
It is. Well, it's video game deathmatch. Just like stop fighting against each other in a pretend space. Of course, round 2 of video game deathmatch is going on. Mario versus Zelda. That's an easy one. Mass Effect versus Mortal Kombat. And Resident Evil versus Pac-Man. It's very. I need to know. So the only way to inform me on this, because all of us are just kind of lost in the haze on that question, you have to go vote. G4TV.com/deathmatch. And we should also point out, as Matt had mentioned, if you've been wondering how we came up with those matchups, notice the strange pattern emerging when you see the selections. It's alphabetical.
Yeah, there was no conspiracy there.
Yeah, there's really
to put Madden up against
Mario or Mass Effect or
like,
whatever.
It's like, this will screw with our heads.
Yeah.
No, it was all.
The key to how we function are really obvious patterns. You know, it kind of helps me get through the day. That's how I get my pants on. It's,
An obvious pattern.
An obvious pattern, yes. It's like, oh, I had those on yesterday. I will put them on again. And that is a green sock. That is a green sock. I will put them on. It's just easy.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? All right, I would like to welcome Leah.
Hello.
Fresh from Dallas.
Yep.
Was Dallas itself fresh, or did you have to freshen up when you got back from Dallas?
Oh, definitely had to freshen up.
Yeah, I had a feeling.
Yeah.
That crazy deep Elm. Matt, Kyle, how are you doing?
All right.
Yeah.
Not from Dallas.
Not Dallas. Have you been playing anything lately?
Dissidia Duodecim.
Oh, that's the Final Fantasy one.
Yeah.
Duodecim. That's how they say 12, correct?
Yeah, because I guess it's a reference to a polyhedron that has 12 sides.
I thought it was just 2 decimals.
No, I don't know what they're talking about. So.
Neither does
Well, I would
anyone
like
else.
to just point out that I am still playing The Witcher because of this man, and I got to say, it's still not boring me whatsoever. Of course, Rob Manuel, are you fresh from anywhere?
No.
Just upstairs?
Hardly fresh.
Yeah. Okay. Well, unfresh Rob. But let's start with Matt. Here's something that was kind of a feedback mainstay for all of 2010. It was the gift that kept on giving to us.
Yes. Well, breaking news and all.
Yeah. It's the Infinity Ward or former Infinity Ward Activision lawsuit. We actually have some new stuff came out.
Yeah. It looks like finally the former Infinity Ward folks. Jason West, Vince Zampella, they filed a new claim against Activision, listing all these reasons they felt screwed over by Activision and all that. They said that they were promised it was impossible for them to be fired, that Activision had promised it wouldn't release any games associated with the Modern Warfare brand or Call of Duty games set after Vietnam or in the near future or in the distant future without their consent.
No, and that is something that has popped up before.
Yeah,
this seems to be something that's very central.
Because it seems like early on they expected control of Call of Duty in its entirety, and then Call of Duty got really popular, and Activision said, well, we want more Call of Duty, and you can't make it fast enough, so we're going to have Treyarch do some, and they're like, well, and but in the end, they had to settle
the Modern Warfare brand.
They had to settle for Modern Warfare as their territory in that franchise.
And this definition here pretty much defines Modern Warfare. I mean,
Right.
post-Vietnam era, although it does talk about the future as
Yeah.
well, which was always something that had been surmised was something in the back of their heads they were planning or hoping to do over there.
Yeah, but they claimed that Activision was preparing to fire them once they got Modern Warfare 2 out, and that they had been developing Modern Warfare projects in secret. Yeah, this is like talk about Black Ops.
Okay, the third point you said and the first point seem to run afoul of one another. Activision was promising they couldn't be fired, and they were planning to fire them.
I'm not sure how much they believed
Yeah.
of what they were promised, because, I mean, obviously they, it's Activision.
I mean, I think it's hard to believe that they were ever produced a document saying, we hereby declare you will never be fired. You're going to exist until the mountains crumble and the sun burns out.
And also, clearly, as much as Infinity Ward created these games that sold insanely well, clearly they were a bit of an irritant to the home office on a fairly regular basis. So, maybe they were impossible to fire back when Call of Duty 4 was released. Maybe not so much 2 years later.
So obviously this is sort of the case moving forward. I mean, has Activision made any comments, or are they making their counterclaims, which I assume can't be too long before that
I'm sure there
happens.
will be counterclaims. I mean, they haven't said anything yet, outside of, I believe, a vague promise of, wait till you see what we got. But it's interesting that, at some point, it's going to have to be exposed or proven who's correct here, because they're telling two completely different stories about what happened between Infinity Ward and Activision.
I mean, how much is also on paper versus how much was assumed or was spoken in a business meeting? I mean, I keep thinking about the Kim Basinger case, where she promised to do, what was that movie, The Woman in a Box, with Julian Sands?
Boxing
Helena. She, they claimed that she had agreed to do it in a verbal commitment. She then backed out, said, I don't want to do the movie. And then the studio proceeded in a lawsuit against her, saying that she had to honor her verbal commitment. And it turns out the studio won. So at least in the state of California, some of this stuff has some merit, which unfortunately does a lot for a he said, she said, type situation.
Yeah.
But I just kind of see this big pool of mud and just everyone's just getting the biggest scoop possible. And that's kind of what we have in our future.
Yep. And there's also, is it? I don't know if it's true. I mean, who knows? I'm not that familiar with the California law on that, but like, Activision may need to clear this up before they start talking Modern Warfare 3. So,
well, I mean, it's interesting because I think I don't know for a fact, but I think that's a really valid point. And what this reminds me of is kind of some of the stunts that Activision was playing with Brutal Legend, where they were suddenly making legal claims that seemed to be less for the merit of the claim itself than for the rather remarkable timing.
Right.
Right after E3 is when
because that was in the original claim that the Infinity Ward guys, former Infinity Ward guys, filed earlier, which was it said something like, you can't promote or talk about those games until we get this figured out, because they were claiming that they might own the Modern Warfare name, period, separate from Call of Duty. And so I don't know if that had any basis in fact, but sometimes in these legal cases, everyone just says, okay, just everything stop until we figure this out, whether it's true or not.
Black Ops was called Black Ops, and I think they decided to have a new alternate franchise. Who knows when they made that decision, but that has always kind of stood out to me that seems to coexist comfortably with these legal proceedings. So, yes, time will tell. Come on, Activision. I want to do dramatic readings of whatever it is you're about to file.
I'm telling you, at E3, they're going to announce Modern Warfare Current Conflict.
Oops, problem over there.
Somewhere nowish.
Yeah. Soon. Leah, looks like, and this is interesting. I mean, Sony seems to have found itself in some hot water, and I think and almost understandably so, due to some stuff that involves, someone posting a video about how to hack the PSN.
Right. So, the PlayStation Network and PlayStation Blog went down. I believe it was yesterday. While a hacker collective Anonymous issued a statement to Sony saying, don't yell at us for showing this video.
This is your doing. Now, what is the reason that it looks like, at least the reason that Anonymous made the threat? We don't know yet if the PSN or the website going down is, essentially a result of their actions.
Sony said that it was sporadic maintenance and didn't say anything about hacking. So
right. I mean, obviously there's some PR there, but this goes back to something from a hacker named GeoHat, who I believe
GeoHot. Yeah.
GeoHot. Sorry. All due respect. Who posted a video detailing how you can, is it hacking the PS3? Is it hacking the PSN? I wasn't 100% clear on that.
I believe it was jailbreaking the PS3 and how to do it.
All right. And then obviously it sounds like Sony then wanted to take some steps to figure out who viewed it and actually contacted YouTube and the IPs. That sounds like part of the incentive that Anonymous wanted to make this move. To kind of show that there was, this hole in the PSN, but also to kind of, give some warning. I mean, it's kind of interesting. I mean, Sony usually kind of flies under the radar because we don't really think of the PS3 as being the superior internet console.
Right.
Now, also I think one of the things that Sony had a real problem with GeoHot's actions was it very clearly exposed how bad the security is on the PlayStation 3's online. I mean, they weren't even using encryption on the credit cards. Credit card numbers that were stored.
Oh, so really?
I mean, that's what I read. That's what I read when the GeoHot thing first hit. That it looked like for someone who knew what they were doing, it would be exceptionally easy to get some very sensitive things.
I mean, that's troubling. Now, let's just talk for a second. Somebody posted a video about how to hack the PS3. I don't think this is unique. I don't think this is rare. I can't think of the last time there was a video giving that much more detail to the instructions than say something that you find on a message board.
I don't think it's uncommon. I haven't looked for it recently, but I don't think it's uncommon to find similar videos for the PSP either. I mean, just about everybody has their own a PSP that they just do emulators or whatever on that. I know. I mean, I don't have that, but
Yeah.
Like it's just that doesn't seem like an uncommon thing for the PSP, and then when you do it with the PS3, suddenly it's a federal case.
I mean, and also, I mean, look, I mean, I can't tell. I understand that Sony's concerned there's something out there. Right. There seems to be something overzealous in making requests for the IP addresses of all the people who actually viewed the video. And I don't think, I mean, I don't know if you can make a legal claim that somehow you're liable from having watched that video. I mean, one could accidentally stumble upon it.
Of course.
It would be a remarkable accident, but, you know, things
But it happens, especially when there's so many news stories about it now. People are like, oh, what is this? When they might previously not have cared or wanted to see the video, but they might see it now, and now they might get in trouble for it.
I mean, obviously, I imagine that Google would have taken steps if they were quietly approached to just remove it. Right. And then no one's the wiser. I mean, I think part of the problem here is they just brought attention to something that could have been a lot more modest out there on the internet. And, you know, obviously, I think exposing the holes in Sony's. We're about to read a letter. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and read the letter. It's from Yami Karasu, and he says the news of Anonymous threatening and possibly attacking Sony and the news of PSN downtimes has everyone angry. I'm disgusted at how the community is responding to this, making Anonymous to be the villain and Sony to be the Dark Knight who'll save us, and consequently take away several of our ownership rights in the process. Is the community a bunch of overreacting crybabies, or is this a fight not worth fighting when it means temporary loss of service in storefronts? By the way, I'm not opposed to Sony. I've supported them every step of the way, but threatening our rights and blatantly breaking laws along the way is far out of line and needs to be challenged. There's a lot of points that he's making there.
Right. The trick to that is that they aren't. Sony isn't like taking away ownership rights. Like you agreed to that when you said
unfortunately, yes. That very long, dense thing.
The thing that Anonymous,
reads.
The thing that I think Anonymous is trying to do is point out, it's like, hey, like you shouldn't be doing like we can stop you from, like, you're not as powerful as you think you are, and they can you know bring even Sony to their knees is the idea, and like so they should change their policies to reflect like their attitude towards, you know, freedom of speech and freedom of information. And like I think, you know, because no one reads the EULA, because otherwise if you don't hit accept, you can't play your damn system. So you know the idea, I think, and I'm no expert on it, but the idea I think is that they want to say, hey, like, just give up trying to enforce this kind of thing.
I mean, it's
and I can't really disagree with that. I mean, it's a little scary when a corporation moves. Like, it's a bit like if a building was to take a step. You know?
Yes.
You're like, oh, shit.
I mean, I think that's the thing, is that, you know, large corporations don't have finesse. They don't tend to have much subtlety to be able to navigate, you know, what are some of these very tricky, sensitive waters of like this kind of new media user base that you're trying to appeal to. And it does come across as kind of heavy-handed and somewhat curmudgeonly. And I think at the end of the day, a little bit tone deaf to what the large audience out there really kind of feels and what their sensitivities are to matters like this. All right. Rob.
Yep.
GameStop's doing something that we've talked about GameStop doing for a long, long time.
They're going digital. Well, or actually, they're not completely going digital. They actually purchased Impulse, Steam-like distribution company, as well as Spawn Lab, which is like a Slingbox.
Slingbox. Not easy to say. I forgive you.
It's like a device that allows you to play games on your computer, so you can be somewhere else, and you know it's sort of like on live.
No. Is it like on live in that the game you're playing is on a cloud, or are you playing from like still a box that you own, but you can access it?
I think
remotely?
you're still playing from a box that you own. You can access it remotely.
So it really is like Slingbox. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it is like you are still playing away from home.
All right, and then this is also coming on the heels of them purchasing Congregate.
Yeah, Congregate, which is a very popular flash game sort of site that brings together or congregates all these flash games that a lot of people have started using. And actually, on Congregate, they've even sort of started incorporating a lot of like GameStop ideas in there. So they have you can sign up for Congregate. It's a free service, but you can get achievement points. And some of the achievements that they have per day also have points that go to GameStop. Oh. And so there's the idea that by playing these games or playing certain games to get certain achievements, you're going to get something from GameStop out of it.
Right. I mean, there's actually even that's called synergy.
Exactly.
Obviously, we have talked so much about GameStop, obviously being one of the most significant of the brick and mortar retailers of games, and where we're going to go with digital distribution. I mean, is this the beginning? Do you think? Or?
Definitely,
it has to be.
Without any question. This is them future proofing themselves. Although I have to wonder, first off, how do you take on Steam? Because Steam is just such a juggernaut in this area. And second, how do you make an online digital distribution service suitably obnoxious enough to make me feel like I went to GameStop?
Yeah.
Who's going to try to sell me a magazine subscription?
Yeah, like are you just going to
we
keep
just
trying
need to have those videos just running in the corner. You can never turn the volume down.
I mean, Impulse already has like a number of games. It has Stardock, which is its big sort of like it's big gaming. So like Sins of the Solar Empire. They also have some other games from other companies like EA and so on and so forth. But it still doesn't have like the pedigree or sort of like the the eyes on it as Steam right now. The one thing that they could do to sort of like bring more to it is to go after these smaller indie titles to make it a little bit more profitable for these smaller companies to put their games on this system rather than it is on Valve.
The other I see is here we have a framework. Obviously, the one thing that I think GameStop has maybe an edge over Steam, I could be incorrect on this, is obviously their relationship with the publishers.
Right.
That, if there's someone who can move digitally and have the confidence of the publishers out there in this move, I think GameStop definitely is one of, if not the biggest power player in that space.
I'm just waiting for the day they start trying to sell me used digital downloads.
It's going to happen.
A little bit. Where's the manual? I can't find the tutorial.
That's an extra download.
All right, so there we go with some of the. It was a pretty good week for news, and then involving the Infinity Ward lawsuit. Just kind of, I don't know. I just get that tickle, near my heart, and the tingle that I find on my fingers. This is we have. That's right. So April is not proving to be a great month for releases, but one of the great reasons that we brought you on is Rob Manuel. You're kind of our indie games savant.
Yay.
So we want to talk about. Look, we love our indie games.
And
we want to give them some love. And this is the week for the love.
This is actually a great week for indie games. Actually, if you are looking for a new game this week to download, Dishwasher Samurai Vampire Smile is the big indie game that's coming across.
Is this a follow-up to Dishwasher Samurai?
Yeah, this is the follow-up to Dishwasher Samurai.
This was obviously kind of heralded at GDC 3 years ago?
3 years ago?
It was a fair amount of time ago.
And they've put out like a couple of extra, like Ska Studios, the guy who sort of like developed his own group now to make it. They've put out a couple of other games as well, but this is their big game that they're coming out with.
This was the game, that's right, that was used to kind of define XNA, which is supposed to be the tool set that was going to make it easier for small, underfunded developers to be able to get a game and get it up on Xbox Live.
It was actually the winner of, I believe it was the winner of of a contest. It was like the Live, Dream, Build, Play, Work, Run, Jump.
That sounds like Sony, though. Is that Eat Work? No, Eat Pray Love.
Eat Pray Love. Yes.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was an Eat Pray Love contest where you have to travel the world, find someone that looks different than you, and sleep with them.
Exactly.
Because that's how you get over divorce.
Hey, if it works for you.
Okay, Rob, if you were to take the temperature, I don't want to know how, but if you were to take the temperature of the indie game world, I mean, are we still seeing growth? Are we still seeing something good?
It's a lot of growth, a lot of good still going into it. I think. If anything, more and more games are starting to come out. IGF, which just recently ran its course, they had more submissions this year than any time. Like I think it was like in the thousands, like 2,000, 3,000 submissions. We're seeing games that are actually getting people are noticing, like Minecraft, like Amnesia, like smaller games are actually people are starting to realize that you don't have to be a juggernaut to actually make money in video games. Now, there are a ton of smaller indie games that are not going to see a lot of money, but still, it's not impossible to get your name out there. It's not impossible to get your game out there. It's not impossible to actually make something that doesn't have, a larger corporation sort of breathing down your neck as you're making it.
Now, do you think, I don't open this up to everybody, how much of this is because when I think about how many people are out there making games, okay, is this the new equivalent of let's start a band?
I mean,
also,
I think people are still starting bands. But,
Yeah.
I
this
know,
is for
much
the
to
people,
my chagrin.
for the people who are too nerdy to start the band. I think you've got.
when I look at this, I look at it like sort of like the indie movie scene. Like people are like indie movies. Like you sort of see a movie where it's small and quirky and stuff like that. Now, some indie movies are made by bigger companies.
Yes.
To make it look like an indie movie.
Yes.
But there are still like people who do make very small movies for very little budget, and they just blow up.
Now, the second half of the question is, could we start to coin a term called the Angry Bird effect? Like, obviously, modest game put out there becomes massive hit, gets bought by EA. A handful of people are now set for life. That, I mean, that's one of the best American dream stories I've seen in business in this economy in probably the past 4 or 5 years. And how much of that is kind of like, hey, I'm out of a job. I'm just going to make myself one of them Angry Bird games.
I think I think we're seeing that with a lot of stuff. Valve, for one, when they were making Portal, took a very small basically a student game, and they were like, would you like to make a larger game? And so now they're pretty much set for life.
And it wasn't all that dissimilar with Left 4 Dead. Turtle
Rock. Yeah.
Turtle Rock.
Turtle Rock.
They kind of just come on into the fold.
Same with
kind of, honestly, Valve is kind of like Skull and Bones. Mm-hmm. Like you're just going to get some secret tap on the back of your shoulder, and suddenly you're sitting at the table with George W. Bush.
You wake up in the middle of the night and they're there.
Valve seems to be a little better of a talent scout, though.
Yeah. Well, even that.
They're taking Dota too.
Yeah.
Same sort of thing.
I mean, it is. I mean, I think that there has got to be an innate pleasure in making games, but I do wonder how many people actually think they're going to make money off of that game so much as they're going to get noticed. Perhaps it will get them a job, or better yet, their studio is valued enough that it gets purchased by one of these companies.
And that's really the big problem that's facing a lot of indie titles is that how do you get noticed when there are so many other indie titles floating around?
Yes, I know.
I mean, especially for like PC or even like XNA, where it's like you have all these indie titles that are floating around. People are just making, Avatar and zombie games all the time. How do you pick out the best one of those, like, 4 or 5 games, 6 games, 20 games that come out like every week, every couple of weeks, stuff like that?
I mean, we have said many times that we feel sometimes embarrassed, but we have to have something get released and get kind of popular before we start to notice it. Yeah. I mean, we try to keep our ear to the ground, but this is a whole different system.
It does help that we get in our general email box moderately often, like people, developers who have made indie games or their Xbox Live indie games, and they'll send us like, hey, we made this and it's out now and here's a code, please look at it. And we actually do look at all of those that we get. Yeah. They don't always make it on the show, but we always do. We just got one from pew 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 pew.
On the name alone, I want to cover it.
which I guess is like it's like a side-scrolling shooter, but 2 people have to play it. You play with a microphone and you yell into the microphone and tell it to, like up, shoot, pew 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 pew.
And there's great little
awesome.
And there's so many of those like smaller, like really quirky indie games out there that Button was one of the games that we saw like a while back, where it was just like you play with a group of people, you're racing to hit the button, but you have to hit it in a certain way. Sometimes the game tells you to hit your button 10 times, but only 10 times.
Oh, yeah, I remember
or
that.
Or you lose. Or something like, don't hit your button, but you're trying to hit everyone else's button at the same time, and it makes you do silly things like sing happy birthday, makes you spin around, gives you, like, you have to run to it. It's so much fun.
It's actually a great idea for Connect. I mean, there's opportunities there with that
and there's
I think should be exploited.
Actually another game that's coming out, Octodad, which was a student game a while back, actually got the Connect port just recently. And so a number of people have actually played Octodad using Connect, which I think is
that's pretty brilliant.
Yeah.
Octodad, but what I'm saying is keep sending us that stuff. It's one of the only ways sometimes it's one of the only ways we see these things show up in a timely manner.
I mean, it's interesting, though. We were talking about Octodad and Button, and those are 2 games I say fall very far outside of the traditional games.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And that, I mean, what's that kind of mix? People trying to replicate existing genres versus people trying to do stuff that definitely probably it's less fun to play than it is to really admire their audacity and that they should be paid attention to.
But there's also some great games like Hawken that just that we just saw a trailer for, where it's a mech battle game, and you look at that game and it's like, this is a AAA title.
But no, it's made by 9 people.
It's made by 9 people, but it looks fast. It's smooth.
Remember, back
it's
in the
fun.
old days, AAA titles were typically made by around 9 people.
Yeah.
So.
Completely. And then we also have like some great games like Journey that should be coming out with from that game company. That just every time I look at it, it's just gorgeous. I mean, they're still keeping like a lot of it close to the chest, but it's just beautiful. And Monaco hopefully will be coming out.
Yes, I mean that's obviously I got to host yet again. It probably is. That might be the highlight of my year. Getting to host the Independent Games Challenge. It's kind of an adjunct aspect of the DICE conference and the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences Awards. But yeah, the jump in submissions from one year to the next was quite remarkable. And I wanted to say that this guy who's making Monaco, it's him and maybe one other person.
Yes.
Absolutely incredible way of sort of looking at stealth and how to play cooperatively. And I would just like to say, if you are out there and you have the opportunity to help this guy finish his game, please do so, because it really is. It's just one of those examples of something that feels and plays slightly familiar and at the same time feels absolutely fresh and different. And I think that's some of the best stuff that we're seeing in the indie game scene.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to read, I love this question. It's from Chantler. And he says, I would like to know what everyone thinks an indie game is. I think about all the different ones like Limbo, Deathbank, and Angry Birds, just to name some more popular ones. All they really seem to have in common is a smaller budget than the millions by millions of AAA titles seem to have. Millions and millions of AAA titles. We're getting less and less of those, actually. So is that all an indie game is, a game with a small budget? I remember this discussion about music and movies.
Well, because remember, the Star Wars prequels are indie movies.
Yeah. I mean,
Independently funded, that's what it means.
I mean, at the end of the day, the most true definition of it, although obviously over time, it tends to have an implication.
Right.
And
it kind of comes down. It's like, well, if it doesn't remind me of Rushmore, it's not really an indie movie. You know, like it's so with these, everyone kind of thinks of the little games as the indie games, but I think Hawken doesn't look like a little game.
No.
It doesn't feel like a little game. I bet when you play it, but it's like. It's still an indie game because there's no major publisher attached to it. Maybe one day there will be. Maybe EA will pick it up or something, and it'll be an EA Partners game or something. It won't be indie anymore, but it will have had its roots in the indie scene.
There was that game that we saw at PAX, the one made with the Unreal Engine that was with EA Partners, and I'm blanking on the name of it. It was quite interesting. You did some teleportation. It will come to me in a moment.
I don't think I saw that.
We'll talk about it again. But once again, it was an EA Partners game. But I think you can agree, Leah, that there's just a way that if you know nothing about a game and someone shows you something, there's a way that you will think indie and you will think commercial.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know. I don't play that many indie games, but if Rob comes up to me and says, "Hey, look, this is an awesome game," then I will try it. So.
And you know what? In that regard, I would have to feel that it is closer to music than the indie movie scene, where word of mouth really was. I mean, look, when you're in college, it's word of mouth, so you can get that thing that no one else has. You look like you're smarter. And I think there's an element, and that's what's going to help foster the indie game scene. So quickly, is there an indie game? I want to go around and see if there's anything that's your favorite or something you're playing right now. Leah, I'm happy to start with you.
My favorite indie game is Torchlight. I love it.
Somewhere Kevin Kelly is going, yay!
I
love
I know you have your problems with Torchlight, but I personally love Torchlight.
I like Torchlight.
So.
Torchlight 2 is also it's going to be coming out, so we're going to get co-op with that. That the one thing like everyone asked about in the original Torchlight is like, why can't I play with other people? Where's this?
I mean, really, these Torchlight guys, if they keep doubling down and put like these games out before Diablo 3 comes out, they can do quite well because, I mean, there's so much hunger for Diablo anything.
Yeah, it's like the perfect bite of Diablo while you're waiting for the next one to come out. I love it.
Matt, is there anything?
Probably my favorite indie thing I played recent months is Aquaria, which is actually from 2007, but I got it in the Humble Indie Bundle when they added the first Humble Indie Bundle into the new one back in December. And it ran on Mac, which was the only computer I had back home when I was home for Christmas. So I played that a lot, and it just caught me for some reason because it's kind of got an Echo the Dolphin element to it, and the music's really nice, and it's great.
It's relaxing.
Aquaria is the name of the game.
Aquaria.
You play a mermaid. It's not the most masculine game in the world. But, I'll play extra Gears of War 3 to make up for it.
But it's really it's beautiful. It's fun. It's just you explore.
Yeah, sometimes that's all I want to do. I want to wander around somewhere feeling safe.
Exactly.
That's all. Rob,
Don't go to Dallas.
I really loved World of Goo. It was this game that when it first came out, it's sort of like engineering for fun.
Yeah.
And it gives you so many different tasks where you're just like, you have to do this, and you look at it the first time, and it's like, I don't know if I can do that.
And an important point is that was made by former EA employees.
Yes.
And I think that's another thing to consider is that there are people out there making indie games who have a deep background in making games for major
Yeah,
publishers.
well, I would say there's going to be definitely, with this new sort of renaissance, there will be people who maintain an indie games career, and just that's what they make. It's not it doesn't have to be the Angry Birds story where you suddenly get bought out by the big guy and become, I'm sure some people, I'm sure Jonathan Blow at least will simply keep making these
yes.
as long as he
And
can.
he also
You know,
has,
it's funny. We never. Was there ever anybody out there who was like, Roxio's a bunch of sellouts? They went to EA.
Yeah.
It's just there's something
I
very
bet you
commercial
there
and
are.
slick
Yeah.
about that
Yeah.
product.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But he does have his game, The Witness. So he's still working on that
Yeah.
one that should be coming out.
I'll bet you the Crush the Castle developers probably say that about the Angry Birds.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I guess it's probably just as you grow up, that sellout thing becomes sort of a more middle of the road. I always like to think of William H. Macy in Jurassic Park 3, and when asked about that, he goes, "I have kids I have to send to college."
Yeah,
And there are realities in life.
Think,
Everybody, and purity of the soul for public consumption is not always the primary, most important thing in life.
Unfortunately.
I think Michael Caine originated that with Jaws 4. Where he said I have not seen the movie. I hear it's quite terrible, although I have seen the house it built, and that is quite lovely.
Yes. And then once again, Steve Martin, his incredible art collection that will one day probably be. I think he has enough art for one museum. Of American and European modern art. So there's reasons, motivations. Leah, you were in Dallas because there's an MLG event,
there was an MLG
and that
event.
stands for Major League Gum.
Close.
Yes.
Very close. Major League Gaming.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about this show.
Yeah.
What's my name?
Joe?
Yeah, Joe. Okay, so how was it? What was this event?
So this event was Major League Gaming's first pro circuit event of 2011, MLG Dallas, and basically it's a competitive video game tournament. It's probably the largest in North America, and so they have 3 games on the circuit this year: Halo Reach, StarCraft 2, and Call of Duty Black Ops.
Now, when you say the tournament, when you refer to tournament, do you mean that particular event in Dallas, or is that kind of?
So
is it more like the PGA Tour?
Yeah, so I believe there's 6 events. The next one is in Columbus in June. So this was just the first one of many.
Right. I'm curious. What's the atmosphere like at these events? I mean, the last one I went to was the World Cyber Games, which. See, now
not the same thing.
Now the song is stuck in my head. Beyond the game. Beyond the game.
The one thing they did that just will live on.
I mean, you know what? When I die,
MLG is
I
much
want
more
that
like a
played
real
at my
sporting
funeral.
event.
At that point, I will be beyond the game.
Yeah.
So anyway, Leah, I mean, is it... I guess my comparison to the World Cyber Games is that while it was open for spectators, the event was in no way designed for one to easily spectate.
Okay, so that's how MLG was last year. This year, they took spectators into mind a lot more. So now, instead of how they've done it in the past, they have 3 main stages, 1 stage for each game. And then there's a huge screen set up for StarCraft, 3 screens for Halo, and 1 screen for Call of Duty. And then there's 500 chairs to facilitate all the spectators. And then there's also mini stages where you can watch all your favorite players play. So it was really important this year to make it a good spectator experience, and they achieved that.
How many people were there? Would you say, like, spectating?
Probably like close to 2,000 or 3,000.
Nice.
Because each section had 500 chairs, and the chairs were always filled up in each section with people on the floor trying to watch their favorite games be playing.
Was there a sense of pomp and circumstance surrounding it? An MC or a processional of everyone marching in representing their various teams?
Running with a digital torch or something? What?
Flowers strewn in front of them.
No, I mean, other than like a trophy ceremony at the end, that was all.
No, which is just fine. I mean, that would probably, you don't want to draw comparisons to other sporting events.
Wasn't like WWF with the nerds running out of the posters or anything like that.
Yeah, I watched some of it on because they had they had separate streams for each game, and then they had a main pro circuit stream for like kind of the main event that was happening at the time. It was interesting that like it was very much set up like a professional sports telecast, and like you had the announcers in suits and the guy, the guy, or at least jackets, and they were talking, their headsets, and they were going on, talking about stuff that, I was mostly watching StarCraft 2 because I'm trying to understand StarCraft 2, because God, that's hard to follow. I mean, I'm a fighting game person. It's hard to follow a full RTS, but it's neat the way they do it. They had was it Day 9
They had
and
Day 9,
DJ
Wheat, and JP McDaniel are the three like bigger casters, and they're always at MLG, and they do a very good job of making a very complicated and complex game and kind of breaking it down so everyone can watch it. And it was a shame because at MLG, not only for StarCraft but for all the games, the people in the audience couldn't hear the commentators because they had to turn it off so that the players couldn't hear. Yeah.
Which I get that.
Yeah, and everyone understands why, but it's such a big issue that the spectators can't hear the
Well,
commentators.
it should be like the UN where they have those like headsets so you can understand what the guy from Bulgaria is saying.
Yeah, So
They should broadcast it on like a local like FM band or something.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, as first to the casters, as one who has attempted this and will publicly acknowledge the fact he sucks incredibly at it, I want to just tip my hat to their skill level, and I think an RTS far more so than a fighting game, which is really it's just one plane. Everything that's on the screen is all the information you need to know. That's not necessarily the case because maps can be so big in an RTS. But I'm actually more curious about how they handled Black Ops. Because obviously I think the most popular, if there was a commercial market for watching these, would be for the shooters. Except in my 13 years, and I've talked with Matt about this, it is impossible for me to picture how on earth you televise live a first-person shooter tournament.
It's so hard, and because those games aren't really made for spectating like StarCraft is, so they just have to go from one person to the next person and have like the 4-screen split.
And like I found the difference is okay when you have a sports, when you're watching basketball, when you see Butler lose, quite sad to watch them lose last night. But the ball, that's your focus of attention. There's nothing interesting almost ever that isn't happening near the ball.
Right.
It's almost like when you're watching a shooter, there's like 25 balls all in play at the same time, all of them of equal importance.
It's really hard to watch first-person shooters, especially at an event like that. What I found myself doing when I was watching Halo and Black Ops, I just was like, all right, I like this player. I'm just going to watch his screen the whole time because eventually he's so, like all of them there are so good. They're going to start doing something awesome.
Now, was anybody doing any casting of Black Ops?
Yeah, there were casters. All three games had very intelligent, smart casters that know their games very well. And
I want to get one of these guys on the show. I mean, I just want to pick their brain about how they do that.
Because I was watching a lot of StarCraft with Day 9 and DJ Wheat, and the problem that happened with StarCraft was because Blizzard removed LAN play, the only way to commentate on something live as it was happening was to be in their match as a spectator over the internet. And if the internet slowed down and started causing lag, basically for the sake of the competition, you had to boot everybody but the two players out so they could have a fine connection. So there were periods where DJ Wade and Day 9 would have to literally sit there and talk to the camera about nothing for like 40 minutes while they waited for the match to finish so they could get the replay file and then commentate on that. And it reminded me of like our worst fears during like E3 Live.
No, that sounds closer to the 360 launch.
360 launch,
when I was going to be doing the interview with the first guy in line to buy a 360, except it was such a madhouse down there that getting him over to me was going to take about a good 6 seconds. I couldn't hear anything because we're in an airplane hangar. And I start vamping in the weirdest way possible. I start analyzing the packaging of the Xbox 360. And I was like, well, no surprise that the concentric circles we've been seeing in the logo, and once again, obviously that is a 360. There seems to be a lot of excitement here. They're playing some music. I believe this is the Chemical Brothers. And I was just like, where is this guy? So once again, to DJ Wheat and those guys, if they had to endure that, they have my deepest sympathies. Let's get to one more question of the week. I wanted to talk about Duman 6021. And he said, last week's feedback panel seemed to give a lukewarm welcome to the arrival of the 3DS. Thanks for watching. Especially with the less than spectacular launch titles available. My question is, in the last 15 years, has there ever been a great launch of a new system, handheld, or console? Which launches best balanced out availability of systems and quality of games?
Dreamcast.
I love this.
Wow.
The Dreamcast is the only one I can think of.
Pretty much.
Dreamcast was an incredible launch. Especially in comparison to the Japanese launch, which was a Mahjong game and a Godzilla walking simulator.
Yeah, that was.
But
so
no, the American launch of the Dreamcast was one of the best, if not the best.
NFL '99 from Virtual Concepts.
NFL 2K.
Sonic.
You had Sonic Adventure, which we didn't know yet.
Yeah, we didn't know.
We didn't know.
And the whale was really pretty.
Yeah, the whale was great.
Oh, it was great.
When I first got that for the Japanese Dreamcast, I had a year before, but I remember when that tornado started in the second level, I just started laughing because I'd never seen anything like that on a screen. It was incredible.
And of course,
you had Soul Calibur.
Soul Calibur, which was just
and then you had like kind of those weird you had like the Ready to Rumble, and you had just like those weird little follow-up games that, like, if you wanted a more esoteric thing, you could get it. But if you could find 3 great games for yourself,
and to have a sports game, a fighting game, and platforming adventure game. I mean, it really ran the gamut of where those tastes of a new buyer would want something there. I mean, like, I know there are examples like the N64 that has Mario 64, where there's one game that everyone wants, and it's the sole reason to actually buy the system.
Super Mario World.
I'm trying to think of any other.
I mean, why do you think that you don't see more of this after the Dreamcast launch? Of giving people like this whole sort of like smorgasbord, or like a sampling of a sports game, a fighting game.
I think Sega knew they had to hit hard. Like it was desperation.
I think also
level.
it's that Sega waited to release it until they had the games to support it. I mean, if there's one thing that I hear from developers around every new launch, and this might even be from some who are kind of with the company.
Right.
It's not having enough time with the hardware and not knowing what they're dealing with.
Yeah, they had that Dreamcast hardware in people's hands as soon as they could get it there.
Yeah.
It's not like when suddenly you've got a 6-axis in your hands 2 weeks before you have to show the game.
And while sort of 2 weeks before the launch of the Dreamcast, Bernie Stolar, the then president of Sega of America, kind of went away. But I mean, I think that to this day that the legacy, Peter Moore did take over in those last 2 weeks, but there really is a legacy of an excellent launch on that, but nothing tops Choo Choo Rocket. So D2 and Mach and X close, but there's no Choo Choo Rocket. All right, well that is feedback for this week in April. Something will happen between now and next week.
Will it?
And there will be discussion about it.
Is that a threat? Or?
Oh no! It's just.
Oh, you're just assuming.
I'm assuming something's going to happen. I did want to do a quick shout out for a dear friend, a wonderful journalist, and someone I always look forward to. His name is Harold Goldberg, and this is his new book that came out yesterday called "All Your Base Are Belong to Us: How 50 Years of Video Games Conquered Pop Culture." I've been reading it, and this is it's a fun read, and it's definitely written by someone who knows and breathes this.
It's a fun read, and
industry.
It's a true read.
Yeah, it's a true read, and it's got insights that I wish I had put them on paper.
And there's a quote from
taking credit for them.
And there's a quote from Abby on the back.
Yeah. Oh yes, and there is a wonderful quote from Abby Happy. So if she likes it, I mean, I'm glad.
To pick it
I'd
up.
be too scared to disagree with her.
That's true.
All right, guys, we'll be back next week having a lot of fun. Thanks for watching. See you then.
Hi, I'm Blair Butler, and if you like comics or you watch the Fresh Ink segment on Attack of the Show, guess what? I review brand new comics every single week on Friday. Just go to g4tv.com/Fresh Ink, and you'll have comics galore, a virtual waterfall of comics, although that would bend them and that would decrease their value, which is terrible.